Suggestions for Students of Psychology, Part 6, Study of Psychic and Spiritual Phenomena. 1. Psychic powers and their phenomena. Changes produced in the mind by some external finite power without the aid of material means of communication are called psychic phenomena. The power to produce and perceive psychic phenomena is called psychic power. Psychic phenomena occur in what may be called the subconscious mind, which is exterior and inferior to the conscious mind. We are related with the spiritual universe through the psychic powers of the subconscious mind, just as we are related with the material phenomena through the vital forces in the physical organism. Let the sphere D in the chart indicate the subconscious mind. Through the spiritual substance which pervades the material universe, vibrations are constantly traveling which produce impressions in the subconscious mind. These impressions are called psychic suggestions. This is an experience common to all minds, although the different habits of different minds lead to different results. In those minds which are very active and positive, these psychic suggestions are thrown off. This accounts for the fact that people of a very positive temperament very seldom have psychic experiences of any kind. In negative minds, however, these psychic suggestions take root and accumulate, often finding their way into the conscious mind and occasioning the formation of ideas which are accepted by the mind, just as those derived from any ordinary impressions would be. We are all constantly receiving psychic suggestions, but we become conscious of them only when the conscious mind is in a negative condition or when we deliberately give attention to them. Mind reading. Every mental state which we consciously or unconsciously entertain causes vibrations in the surrounding spiritual atmosphere, which produce impressions upon the subconscious minds of other persons. When the mind is in a negative condition or when it gives deliberate attention to psychic suggestions, it becomes conscious of those mental states in the minds of others which have occasioned the suggestions. It is possible for a person having developed the power of psychic perception to read from the minds of others not only those mental states of which they are conscious, but in some cases, those psychic suggestions which have found lodgment in the subconscious mind of which they themselves are not conscious. Telepathy. Telepathy is the communication of minds at a distance. It will readily be seen how the law of vibration makes it possible for mental states to be communicated through the spiritual atmosphere between minds in the same rate of vibration. This experience would be more common if we gave more attention to our psychic impressions. Hypnotism. Hypnotism is psychic suggestion deliberately applied and willingly received. In this case, the activities of the conscious mind are entirely suspended and the operator controls the volitions of the subject through suggestions made to the subconscious mind. Prophecy. The various causes which are to combine to produce some future event all exist at the present moment and are tending toward their combination. A person who has developed the power of psychic perception is able to recognize these causes and their tendencies and so to forecast the future. Such prophecies are never wholly reliable, for we can never be certain whether we have discovered all the causes which will influence the effect, nor what their ultimate action and combination will be. Clairvoyance. The presentation in the mind of the idea of a form which is not derived from observation is called clairvoyance. The psychic phenomenon can be accounted for in two ways. 1. The image may be the result of a psychic suggestion causing a subconscious activity of the imagination, resulting in the presentation of the idea of a form which has no substantial existence. 2. The sense of sight may be raised to a rate of vibration high enough to allow it to perceive spiritual forms, i.e., forms whose substance is in a higher rate of vibration than that which is usually perceived through the senses. Clairaudience. The presentation in the mind of the idea of a sound which has no physical origin is called clairaudience. The psychic phenomena may be accounted for in the same manner as clairvoyance. Psychometry. The interpretation of psychic suggestions received through contact with material objects is called psychometry. The psychic phenomenon may be accounted for in two ways. 1. The object may form a connecting link between the mind of the reader and the minds of persons connected with it. 2. The activities of the mind produce impressions upon the spiritual substance pervading material things, which can be interpreted by persons possessing the power of psychic perception. Mediumship. Mediumship is a condition in which the volitions of the individual are controlled by some external finite intelligence, generally considered to be excornate. Cultivation of psychic powers. Psychic powers may be developed by using them. They are common to all minds. We all use them and are influenced by them to a far greater degree than we imagine. By giving more careful attention to the psychic impressions which we receive and using the power of vibration to convey our mental states to other minds through the spiritual atmosphere, we shall come into possession of these important functions of our being. Sitting in the silence is very conducive to this end, as it enables us to quiet the excessive activity of the conscious mind. Because the phenomenon which they represent to the mind are remarkable and to many minds exceedingly mysterious, some persons have exalted the psychic powers as being of a divine nature. This is not necessarily true. Many persons who surrender their lives to the sway of these powers become sensual and unbalanced and gradually cease to express their own individuality. But when the psychic powers are brought under the control of the conscious mind, they form a valuable addition to our mental powers. And if both the conscious and subconscious minds are brought under the control of the superconscious or spiritual mind, they become truly spiritual powers and aid in the realization of the divinity of the soul. 2. Spiritual powers and their phenomena. Changes produced in the mind by the attraction of the soul for the infinite spirit are called spiritual phenomenon. The power which produces them is called spiritual power. It is the divine universal love of the soul, the expression of its attraction for the infinite spirit. Spiritual phenomenon occur in what may be called the superconscious mind, which is interior and superior to the conscious mind. They are possible only when the conscious mind is disposed to allow the soul to seek unity with the infinite spirit. These spiritual phenomenon consist in the different degrees of spiritual consciousness to which the mind is elevated by certain spiritual activities. The aim of all spiritual activity is the realization of the soul's unity with the infinite spirit. The various methods by which this end is approached may be grouped in two classes, religious and philosophical. Aspiration and concentration. The first state of spiritual consciousness, in which the individual recognizes intelligence behind all phenomenon and directs the soul's love toward all spiritual beings, is attained by the religious mind through aspiration and by the philosophical mind through concentration. Aspiration is a state of mind in which the individual is disposed to recognize the activity of the Supreme Being in all phenomenon and seeks unity with that being through prayer and other religious exercises, thus opening the soul to an influx of spiritual power. Concentration is a method of mental discipline employed for the purpose of overcoming the tendency of the mind to deal with all experiences in a superficial way. The mind is inclined to act upon intellectual judgments without referring them to the soul. Hence, most of our activities do not express the soul, but rather reflect the environment. We rarely contemplate one object or subject of thought long enough to discover that which it expresses. Concentration is the practice of holding the attention of the mind on one object or subject of thought until the soul realizes its unity with the power which it expresses in that phenomenon. By means of this practice, the habit of spiritual thinking may be established. This state of consciousness is indicated by the sphere capital C in the chart. Inspiration and meditation. The religious mind thinks of the Supreme Being as an external being from which it receives life, love, and wisdom. When it realizes the influx of these powers which follows aspiration, it calls this state of consciousness divine grace or inspiration. The philosophical mind thinks of the Supreme Being as a universal intelligence and substance of which it is a part. By the practice of concentration, it establishes this idea and puts its own spiritual being into relation with all other spiritual life. It then enters the state of consciousness called meditation, in which it is receptive to the influx of spiritual power from all beings with which it has related itself, and from the universal spirit which includes it. This state of consciousness is indicated by the sphere capital B in the chart. Illumination and realization. The goal of all spiritual attainment is consciousness of unity with the infinite intelligence. This state of consciousness is called by the religious mind illumination and by the philosophical mind realization. To reach this state of being is the purpose of life. To this end, consciously or unconsciously, we pursue all thought, affection, action, religion. It is the goal seldom attained by the soul while engaged in human expression, for the very idea of expression implies separateness. There are moments, however, in the lives of all devotees when the veil of separateness is rent and the glory of the soul's unity with its source is realized. The more frequent these experiences and the more nearly we approximate to this ideal state of being, the more perfectly poised and the more profound will be our lives. This perfect realization or illumination can never be fully expressed. It is the secret of the inner consciousness of the soul. In the chart, the center, capital A, indicates the state of consciousness known as illumination or realization. End of Part 6, Study of Psychic and Spiritual Phenomenon, the end. End of Suggestions for Students of Psychology by Anita Trueman, narrated by Rex King.